Well, the haters gonna hate, and the faker's gonna fake, baby. I'm just gonna making luck, a Dominion podcast.
Welcome to Making Luck,
a Dominion podcast,
an aloe vera podcast.
Yeah.
My name is Adam.
I'm Jake.
Hi.
And we're here to talk about a card game that we all know and love called Dominion.
Yeah. I like Dominion.
The Ambition of Donald X.
Yeah, that's the subtitle.
Yeah.
Dominion, the Ambition of Donald X.
Yeah.
Last time we had an episode.
Yeah, and that episode was on Horn of Plenty, which is a card. And we talked about that card, and then we talked about Kingdom that we played after the episode.
Yeah.
And now let's talk about that Kingdom.
Yeah. So,
before we talk about this episode, which is on Triumph.
Good call. Do you want to read these, or you want me to do it?
I can take care of this.
All right, go nuts.
Okay, so this kingdom has Patrician with Emporium, Familiar, Farmer's Market, Mountain Village, Priest, Crite, Grave Robber, Horn of Plenty, Hunting Party, and Puka. And it also has Tax and the landmark Aqueduct. And just as a reminder, because we have Puka, one of your starting coppers is replaced with Cursed Gold. Once more for our audio-only listeners, we have Patrician with Emporium, Familiar, Farmer's Market, Mountain Village, Priest, Crypt, Grave Robber, Horn of Plenty, Hunting Party, Puka, and we also have the event Tax and the landmark Aqueduct. And one of your starting coppers is replaced with a Cursed Gold. Now, the opener here is kind of weird to talk about because one thing you don't see right in your face looking at the Kingdom viewer is that Tax is a thing, and Tax puts debt on everything. So first player, second player, how you open with Cursed Gold. There's a lot of variance in terms of like how you can open with your price points.
Yeah, I remember we posted this on the Discord, and the little Kingdom viewer that we use for the Discord, it doesn't show you the little debt chits that are on top of each of the piles.
Yeah.
So without those, I often have trouble imagining, oh, hey, crap, this is a thing you have to deal with.
Right, you don't necessarily get to open the way that you would...
You hardly ever get to open the way you want to because you're going to have to take some debt. So multiple people were like, oh, well, this is an easy opening. On a 5-4 with the Curse Gold, you just open Priest and Hunting Party.
Well,
and
that
would be great if you could do it, but
it's
very unlikely that you can. Because it requires, like...
Going second.
You have to go second or else it's impossible, right?
And we'll talk about later, but going second has some other problems. But yeah.
Well, yeah.
So yeah.
But you have to... Your opponent has to get their turn 1 card before you so that you don't take any debt yet. And then they also have to not tax the other thing. I mean, or else it's probably bad. Like, I don't want to open a Priest and take 3 debt with it, right? That feels a lot bad.
Yeah. I mean, you might do it anyway, though. Like, it's weird. So...
Yeah, on turn 1, player 1. Let's say I have 4 coppers and I don't have to play my Curse Gold to get it.
That's the ideal situation. I'm taking a Priest...
Yeah.
And I'm very happy about it.
Yeah, Priest is by far the best card you can open with.
Yeah, and like we experimented a little bit with opening Puka, and we just decided that was worse than opening Priest in almost every way. Like, I'd play my Cursed Gold so that I could get a Priest. And like the part of the reason for that is that, one, the Priest can like trash your estates and curses and whatever that you're going to be taking. And also, opening Puka gives you some economy issues, and this is a board where you really don't want to be hitting 3 a whole bunch. Like, hitting 3 over and over is really sad because you can't really do anything that moves your build along. You can put a silver in the deck, but at a certain point...
You usually take a debt with a silver, and that feels really bad because you're kind of hoping to hit 4 the next turn. Yeah,
exactly. And, like, the silver is, like, not that helpful. I mean, it doesn't do nothing.
You want 1, and that's okay.
It helps you pay off debt. It's a unique card. It helps you get hunting parties. Sure. Yeah. Silver does some stuff for you.
Priest is just a lot better at doing stuff.
You don't want... I mean, silver is worse than, like, almost any other card you can put in your deck here that you would buy. Right.
Wow.
Obviously, it's better than, like, copper and curse and whatever, but, like, silver is, like, one of the worst options of things you could be putting in your deck here.
That's a really harsh way of putting it. It's still a good card.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I think it's interesting, though. Let's say that you know you're going to get 4 coppers on turn 2. And, you know, whether or not you're going to play the Curse Gold to get there... If you're on turn 1 and your opponent hasn't gotten a priest yet, I really liked taxing the priests.
Yeah, just because it is such a good card. Like, they're probably just going to suck it up and take the debt.
Either that, or they're in the same situation.
And they're like, I'm going to
priest.
tax the priest, and then the priest has 5 debt.
And now I'm sitting here looking at 3 coppers and a cursed gold in my hand on turn 2, and a priest with 5 debt. And I think actually opening Puka there can be okay.
Sure, and that's in that particular situation.
I mean, there's a 4 debt difference here.
Like, I mean, this is obviously... so, I want to call this an edge case, but, like, it happened more than once. Mm-hmm. And, like, the thing is, this kingdom has a lot of different combinations of things you can open. So it's kind of hard to talk specifically about what you do, because it's very reliant on what has happened thus far. And so
tax does that.
Yeah. So rather than that, let's talk about the build. Yeah. Let's talk about like what your priorities are, what you're building to.
Sure.
Originally, I had talked about maybe familiar not being crazy, not because it's good, but because it's not bad and it is 2 uniques, potion and familiar. So it's actually really bad. Yeah, so it's just not good. At a certain point, you actually run out of priest food. So, like, you can actually even be, like, helping your opponent by junking them.
So, here's my take on familiar. Originally, I think we both said it was kind of close, but you don't go for it.
Yeah.
I think after playing 1 game with Jake, which was very strange, and after a little bit of experimentation with a bot, the thing is, like, you have to open potion. And if you're doing that, you're not opening with a priest.
You're taking debt for the potion, whatever.
I mean, you might be doing that with the priest anyway. But let's say you can, like, open potion on turn 1, pay off the debt turn 2, and you don't get anything. Sure, and this is the best case for familiar.
Yeah.
So now you have a deck with a curse gold and a potion in it.
Yeah.
You still, like, 50-50 to miss familiar at that point.
Also, the familiar is a lot less good than normal because of curse gold. I mean... Don't get me wrong, like, putting curses in the opponent's deck is still good. Doing it faster is good, because it helps them, like... It can, like, push them out of getting control, but... Every time you play your curse gold, those familiars that you bought that potion for are just, like, a little bit... Like, they're 10% less effective.
Yeah, it's certainly sad. But, in the case where you win that coin flip, and you get this particular opening that allows you to have those coin flip odds...
Yeah.
I'm gonna say it's not all that much worse than Priest.
Yeah, I mean, it's still...
And that's about how good Familiar is.
It's still worse, but not by much. Okay, so, like, I mean, we said you don't open Puka, but I do think you get a Puka.
I think Puka's a great card for the deck.
Yeah, and I think
that has a lot to do...
village in the deck first, I would say, but it's...
I mean, you want a village and a Puka around the same time.
Yeah.
The reason you want the Puka is because the deck looks like you play a bunch of hunting parties, and you want to... draw a bunch of horns, right? That's the end goal.
Yeah.
But Hunting Party isn't super great at drawing a lot of horns. It's great at drawing 1 horn.
And drawing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But the problem is the rest of the stuff in your deck is bad.
So you really would like to get rid of the estates and curses. And you would really like to draw some of the horns, but then at the end of it, you just play a Puka, and you just draw all the rest of the horns that your hunting parties didn't get. And it's pretty good.
Well, so there's that. The other way you get around that, that doesn't involve Puka, and I do think you want a Puka, but Mountain Village and Hunting Party have a nice little interaction because the Hunting Parties are help drawing you stuff, but they're milling cards that you did want, like your extra horns, but the Mountain Villages can grab them back, so...
That's true. And also Patrician can be a little bit nice.
Yeah.
Provided you have... you don't have any extra coppers, which is really important. If all of the extra stuff in your discard is basically horns and like maybe a hunting party or 2...
The Patrician's not that much worse than Lab in that case.
Yeah, it's pretty good, and it's not hard to pick up. Like, a lot of times you're going to have, a crappy hand.
You'll have debt hands, and it's like tax something that doesn't matter. or get a patrician, whatever.
Or like you're gaining something with a horn that's like 3 or less, and oftentimes patrician is pretty good.
Yeah.
And you want the unique card too.
So yeah, there was that. And all in all, as we've talked about in the episode, the Horn of Plenty split was pretty important. Don't get me wrong, it didn't decide the game.
I mean, 7-3 I think was
7-3
decisive.
decided, yeah,
6-4 was not, and I think we said that
6-4
last episode.
Yeah, 6-4 was not. 6-4 did put you in a really good spot though.
Yeah, that's great.
So
You
once
can threaten a lot of really cool stuff if you have a lot of horns.
yeah. So there's that.
This
I think
is
if you
actually something that Wandering Winter brought up in Edge Cased with Priest.
yeah.
If you have a Priest out, you can trash your horns, and it gains you money with Priest.
There you
which
go.
is actually a big deal because you don't want to have too much economy in the deck, but you get that Priest out
from stock cards, yeah.
Right. That's what I meant. But you get that Priest out, and maybe you have like a farmer's market out because you wanted to buy, and it's a unique card. And all of a sudden, if I'm cashing in 5 horns, I have 2 buys, and I could get up to like
Bunch
2
of stuff.
provinces buying 2 provinces. It's not unreasonable. And now I'm threatening with 5 horns to get 7 provinces on a turn. So that little bit of extra reach actually turns out to be very significant. Because I can have 4 horns and I can still get 6 provinces on a turn. It's not crazy.
Well, the other way that you can help get there is Grave Robber. So Grave Robber is definitely sort of a plan B of this kingdom. Like you don't like go into this thinking like, okay, I'm gonna trash a bunch of 5 costs with Grave Robber to gain provinces. But it's a tool in your arsenal. You can even be grabbing your Horn of Plenty's back from the trash if that's a thing that you need to do. So, it's greening a little earlier with the horns isn't as crazy as it usually is because Grave Robber is out. But usually Grave Robber is something that you do if you lost the horn split and, you need to be able to threaten those provinces. Because if you lose the horn split, the opponent can, dance around with provinces and, keep it out of your, effective range of being able to end the game. And just gain provinces as they see fit and then end the game when the numbers work out, but keeping a Grave Robber in the deck kind of keeps them from doing that.
So one thing that came up in a few of our games, which I think ended up happening before Grave Robber was relevant a lot, was there was piles to deal with. Curses are usually low, even if no one gets a familiar, because Curse Gold's going to get played a few times, and then eventually it's nice to keep around for Priest food if you manage to get super thin. Sometimes you end up picking up a second Priest in your build.
Well, it's also a unique card, which is not trivial. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So the curses are frequently low.
Yeah.
The Horn of Plenties, they'll run, and the hunting parties get low. And so there's a 3-pile threat there, and, that matters a lot. It's often good to have a little bit of points because, with curse pile outs, you're taking a points hit.
Yeah.
So if you have a little bit of a points buffer, maybe with Aqueduct, gain a silver and a gold for those unique cards, and then snag a duchy or something.
Yeah.
Get those delicious VP tokens. That's pretty sweet.
Yes. I mean, any source of points like that. Maybe you even got them from Emporium. I think that happened once or twice. Mostly because the patricians were...
It happened to you, yeah.
Yeah, mostly because the patricians were good enough to have in the deck that eventually the Emporiums were revealed.
And then you magically, had a bunch of actions in play and gained a fiber. That happened to you once. It didn't happen to me.
Yeah.
I'm a little jealous, to be honest with you.
Well, I lost that game, if you recall, because,
Yeah, but I wanted the Emporium!
But, because the only reason I was getting the Emporiums was because I really needed catch-up points, and it didn't work out. But... Anyway, so yeah.
The goal is you want to get 6 provinces. Really, that effectively puts the game away. Now you do have to end the game, so you can't totally crap on your deck.
The opponent has pretty much almost no recourse if he gets 6 provinces, and it's pretty easy to transition into a money deck from that point and just close out the remaining 2.
Oh yeah, you've got hunting parties that can find your treasures, and you can still province after that if you've not totally crapped on your deck.
Yeah, the only other thing I will say about this board is that we made the point last episode, the hunting party episode, where I'm saying that you really want to take your first Horn of Plenty earlier than I see a lot of people taking it. And that was very true here. Not the one, because the hunting party is good to help you build the deck, but 2, tax. Like, we're kind of kidding about this, because, like, it's kind of a troll tactic to tax a pile into oblivion, because, you both probably want cards from it. But, it does happen. Like, tax hands happen, and, like, sometimes your opponent actually got a tax that was, like, a lot worse for you than it was for them. And so at that point, actually, yeah, sometimes you need the Horn of Plenty to get your priest, because there's 5 debt on the priest pile. So, like, you need to get the Horn of Plenty to get it instead. So, it just being a gainer was really good here.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, other than that, this kingdom didn't have too many surprises, I would say.
Yeah, Jake whined a lot about first player, because it's kind of a Megaturn build. And
yeah, well, remember the three spuzz from our Megaturn episode. There's speed, splits, and first player. And first player was actually really brutal here. Because, like we said, getting 6 horns puts you in a really good spot. There's a lot of really fast gains. So if you go first, you're very likely getting 6 horns. It's, like, hard for you not to. And so, I'd say first player... I would guess first player wins more often than normal on this board. But, it's speculation.
Yeah, what does that actually mean? And we can get into a very philosophical discussion.
Sure.
Which we kind of did on the supplemental games.
Yeah.
I guess I'd recommend watching those a little more than normal, just because it's so hard to talk about this board without a specific situation in front of you because of tax.
Yeah, right.
Just ignore the part where Jake gets salty about this board, because, it was a little frustrating.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I never got to go first.
Except for when you did. There was actually one game that you resigned. You were going first because you didn't like your opening, and I had the same opening.
Well, yeah, okay, so you opened 3-6 here, and that's the worst it can be. And, like, I resigned because, like, I wasn't really interested in playing it out. Like, it's not like I'm like, oh, this is hopeless.
You'd rather just whine about going second all the time.
Yeah.
Resign all the games where you go first.
Right. It's not that it was, like, totally hopeless. It was, like, I just don't care enough to want to play this out. Like,
and if you want to be good at Dominion, it's important that you do that.
Yeah.
Just resign games that you don't feel like playing anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
You gotta care more about the quality of your wins than the quantity.
Yeah.
Well.
Anyway, so this time we're talking about Triumph.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Triumph is pretty great.
Yeah, Triumph
comes
from the Empires expansion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an event. It costs 5 debt.
No dollars, just debt.
Just debt. It says gain an estate. If you did...
OP.
If you did, +1 VP token per card you gain this turn.
Yeah, so obviously it is a source of points, right? Everything about
estates
that.
are worth points, and VP tokens, they're also worth points.
Yeah, right.
It's pretty sick.
Yeah, and it's potentially it's a lot of points. It can be.
Yeah, Triumph has a wide range of effects. It can go from, well, this is maybe about as good as a duchy, to this is game warping, and your entire game plan is to get as many points out of this as possible.
Yeah, and it's not like a light switch between those. It like kind of hits everywhere in between. Like sometimes it's like, okay, these are my provinces because they're like 6-point triumphs or whatever, and like other so it can kind of fall sort of in the middle of that gambit as well.
Sure, it can, and knowing exactly where it is doesn't necessarily inform how I play with it.
Yeah,
because you just kind of look for support, and then on a turn when you did things that were good, you take a look at how good Triumph is going to be, and you see if it's worth it. And, you're going to be doing a lot of these good things regardless.
It encourages you to build a little more, I'd say. Like,
yeah, most sources of points do that.
Yeah, and, like, this one I'd say in particular, like, even more so than others, just because, like... Okay, so I want to say that, like, Triumph can be worth a huge amount of points. It can be worth, like, almost unbounded points. And in that way, it reminds me of Vineyard a little bit. Also, like Vineyard, in my mind... The fact that it can be worth so many points isn't actually why it's good. I think that it is good so much of the time because the deck that you build that scores a bunch of points with Triumph is a deck that like is really good at doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
like Vineyard.
So I think there's light coming from this comparison in a couple
Yeah.
of different ways. The first one is, he compared it to vineyard and not gardens.
Yeah, right.
I mean, this is not gardens.
It's
I
like the
understand-
opposite of like gardens and Silk Road and stuff like that.
I mean, I understand that Gardens likes you to gain a lot of cards, and so does Triumph. But like,
yeah.
But the deck that you build around either of those two cards is just very different, right? I don't build many Gardens decks that do a lot of things. I normally just get gainers and I spam stuff, and then I try and gain Gardens, right?
Well,
the classic Ironworks Gardens rush.
Yeah, because the thing is that with those cards like Gainers and Silk Road, and even to a degree Theodom, these ones that like want you to put a bunch of a certain kind of card in your deck, or cards that like maybe don't do a lot for your turn, they are asking you to focus on that source of points and have it eclipse the other sources of points. It needs to be better than the next best thing, because it doesn't end the game. So like Province does. So it has to be better than the next best thing, which is like Province or something. And usually that's just a tall order. Whereas something more like Vineyard or Triumph isn't really competing with Province or Colony or whatever, because the deck that you're building is probably quite good at getting those cards too.
Yeah, so
you're not choosing one or the other.
So when you say that a VP card is better than some other card, I want to be a little more specific.
Yeah.
I think in at least Triumph's case, and usually Vineyard as well.
Yeah.
You're looking for an amount of points that can't really be outscored some other way. So most of the time, I'm talking about provinces.
Yeah.
If I can get my vineyards to be worth 6 points each or maybe more, then I don't care if my opponent goes for provinces, going to have more points, and the fact that I'm not ending the game is less relevant. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that's only true if you've built a deck that scores a bunch with Vineyard and then can't also get provinces. And like
which is rare, yeah.
That's the thing, is like that's why these things are so good so often. It's not that they outscore provinces. They can, but that's not why they're good. It's because you can go for them and score a bunch without giving up your options to also go for provinces.
That is frequently the case.
Yeah.
So there's this talk about comparing to vineyards. I actually remember until pretty recently, like within the last 6 to 12 months or so, I feel like I had been underrating Triumph. And in my mind, I was doing a similar kind of comparison to vineyards. But then I thought about it, and I think another comparison, at least that makes more sense in my mind, is comparing it to Goons.
Okay.
And Goons is an attack, it's a plus buy. There's
Sure.
a lot of stuff that's not Triumph there. But in terms of scoring VP, it actually has a lot of similarities. At least in terms of, the magnitude of points you can score.
Yeah,
Right,
it's basically only capped by your imagination.
Yeah.
Adam's gonna add in some sound effects. It's gonna be pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Watch, he's
I've got ideas. It's gonna be great. This is gonna be great. But I mean, assuming you have the right support, you can play multiple goons, and as you add more goons to that, the total number of points you can score on a given turn is going to grow, and it's going to grow quadratically, or a little bit more generally multiplicatively. The number of goons I play times the number of goons I play is roughly related to the number of points I can score.
Yeah.
So I get buys from the goons, and then I get VP tokens from the goons. And so I multiply, if I spend all my buys, I just multiply that together, and that's how many VP tokens I'm getting.
Yeah, sure. And I kind of think I see where you're going with this, which is that Triumph has some of the same considerations, which is that when you can get multiple Triumphs in a turn, then these multipliers that of each one the Triumph is worth add up to this huge number of points, because you can be gaining a bunch of cards and then get a Triumph, and that's one big Triumph. But if you can get multiple Triumphs, then things really start to get cooking.
Yeah, so, I mean, Jake, you're not a numbers guy, and
No.
I am. And I'm going to talk about some math, but, like, that's... If Jake can follow the math here...
Then anyone can.
I was going to put it a little more politely, but I'm not going to disagree with that. The idea is that that's... If you're looking for how many points can I score from Triumph, mean, I'm looking at goons. I'm looking at really, really big numbers of points that potentially can not be outscored by other point sources. That's how good they are.
This is true. Yeah. Now, and you want to go into those numbers, right?
I do. The first thing I'm looking for in terms of supporting Triumph to enable this stuff to happen, I think we have to give a prerequisite, and I think you really want some extra buys so that you can get at least 3 Triumphs on a turn.
Yeah, so, okay, I would say that, well, in this, I was going to kind of say this for the end as, like, a takeaway, but, like, I'd say that extra gains that aren't buys are one thing that enable you to get a big triumph.
For sure.
Extra buys are what enable you to get a lot of points from multiple triumphs, because you can get more than one. If you have both, that's when triumph explodes, because you can get a medium to big size triumph, and then you can get that multiple times. So, like, if you have extra buys, that's one way to enable it. If you have extra gains that aren't buys, that's another way to enable it. But if you have both, then you have a very strong way to enable it.
Sure, and I'll just add a little note here. When he says extra gains that aren't buys, an abundance of buys could serve as those extra gains.
Yeah, right.
Like, if I just have 3 buys on a turn and a bunch of gains, it's kind of similar to, like, having 10 buys and buying some coppers if I want to just get a billion points.
Yeah, gains that aren't buys, though, I would say are usually a little bit better for what I'm talking about.
Because you're not gaining coppers, and coppers suck. This is a point that we actually disagreed on in the outline.
Yeah.
Because I'm saying that if I'm going to use Triumph if I'm going to plan around Triumph as a significant source of VP, I want to be getting 3 buys a turn. I want to have the potential to get 3 Triumphs per turn, or else I just don't think I'm going to be able to score enough points with Triumph to go toe-to-toe against something like Provinces.
Well, okay, so that's the thing, is, like, a lot of the time you won't have to make the choice. So, I mean, sometimes you can be gaining so many cards on your turn, like, processions, spoils, whatever they are, whatever the gains are coming from, that if it's 5 or more, then the triumphs are worth as many points as provinces. If it's more than that, then they're worth more than provinces, and you don't even have to hit 8 to get them. So, is that as good as provinces? It's better and it's worse. It's like you can trash the estates and then they're gone and you still have the points. You can buy them for cheaper, but they don't end the game. So, like, this isn't... I would say that, yes, multiple buys make Triumph a lot better, but I'm going to disagree with Adam that, like, you need it to be viable, because, like, Triumph can be your provinces. And also, the thing is, like, the fact that you can get something that, like, competes with province even, that doesn't take a province out of the pile, it gives you a lot of good positioning tools to, take points that maybe don't end the game, if that's something you're concerned about.
I'm just thinking about all this, and first of all, there's a kingdom with no plus buy, which limits the reasons why you would want to do this extra building in the first place. Like, I think
Triumph is the reason. But yeah, sorry.
I mean, but there's a lot of other things working against you in this situation, and if I'm gonna build that kind of deck with no plus buy, like, I actually challenged Jake to design a kingdom that has this dynamic, and I mean, that was like not too long ago, so you haven't had time to think about it. But
no,
like,
I didn't do it, but I will
leave it to you, the listener, an exercise to the listener. Like, even design one, and like, how many would you have to roll? Like, I'm just saying this is really rare. It seems to me like an edge case, really. Wait,
do we actually have that segment?
Is this working? Let me try it again. Edge case with Wandering Winder. No? It's time for Edge case with Wandering Winder. Go.
Wandering Winder, Wandering Winder, Wandering Winder. Is it like...
Did we break Wandering Winder?
If you say his name 3 times...
Well, anyway, maybe you can come up with it. So let's talk about... The rest of this math kind of just assumes that I am able to get multiple triumphs on a turn.
Okay, sure.
And that multiplicative amount of VP kind of relies on that, right? If I can only get 1 triumph, then of course I just gain a bunch of cards without buying them. Great. We know that, and we can calculate that, and you can just figure out how much it is on any given turn when you gain some cards. Great. However, you have 2 things, and they multiply together to give you a rough idea of how many points you get. The number of gains, and then the number of times you can triumph. Sometimes these things are at odds because, I've got a certain number of buys, and I can either gain a non-triumph card or I can gain a triumph.
The math gets weird.
The math gets weird with Traveling Fair. That's when the math gets really weird.
Oh, yeah, we had a kingdom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we had this kingdom that had Triumph and Traveling Fair and a bunch of games, and I didn't do very well on it.
That was super great. But in any case, most of the time, if I'm going in big for a Triumph turn and I have the luxury of selecting that, then my actual buys, I want to spend as many of them as possible on Triumph. So if I have $16 on a turn, I'm looking at 4 Triumphs, right? Because I mean, they cost 5, but you don't have to pay off all the debt from the last one.
Yeah,
right?
so
I can get
you
4
end your
Triumphs.
turn with debt. As long as you're okay with doing that.
Which, I mean, if I'm scoring as many points, it's a effectively game-ending number of points. So sure,
probably.
Give me those delicious points right in my face. So I'm going to spend 4 buys on Triumphs, and everything else is just copper, pretty much. Yeah. So that's usually the game plan when it comes to buys. It's important that you have a number of gains in excess of this. Like if I'm just buying Triumphs and I have like 6 buys maybe and like $15, I can get 4 Triumphs. But these Triumphs are worth not that much. I can get 4 of them, but I end up with 18 VP.
Yeah.
But if I have like 10 buys, then even if I only have $10, I'm getting 3 Triumphs. I'm getting 27 VP. Or if I have the same $15, then I'm getting 34 VP, and this is just a lot more than 18.
Yeah.
I mean, by the time I get there, I've nearly doubled how effective I am by not even doubling the buys. And that's because, as the numbers get closer together, like the number of Triumphs gets closer to the number of other gains I have on my turn, you're going to get that maximum of like, oh, this is the most I can get. But then in practice, you're spending a little more money on Triumphs, and that's, they're harder to get, and so you're going to end up getting less of them. And it's not that big of a deal to go one way or the other. Did I lose you on the math?
Yeah, a little bit, but no, I mean, it is hard to, like, figure out a lot of the time the best way to do it, but getting more Triumphs is usually better. But really, in practice, what you end up doing is less about maximizing your amount of points and more about like figuring out how many of your gains you're willing to spend on cards that don't make your deck better. Because again, what the strength of Triumph is that it scores more points for you usually without necessarily making your deck worse by doing things you want your deck to be doing anyway. So how many of your gains are you willing to spend on getting more points but not making your deck better and possibly making it worse? Well, that's what scoring points is for usually, so...
Sure, so, like, when you say getting points without making your deck worse, this is a nitpick that Wandering Winder had about your outline.
Oh, it's a legit one. It's that, like, getting the Triumph does make your deck worse. Right. Getting a Vineyard makes your deck worse. But the thing is that building a deck that scores a bunch of points with these, scoring more points off these ones that you're getting, that doesn't make your deck worse. The way that, like, if you're, like, buying more provinces, the only way you're going to score more points with provinces is putting more bad cards in your deck. The only way you're going to score more points off your dukes is to put another duchy into your deck. Whereas, like, you can get a bigger Triumph by actually, like, actively even helping your deck.
Sure. And then there's the other idea that once you have those VP tokens, you can still trash the estate, and the value of those VP tokens is mostly still there.
So Triumph also has some similarities for me to Dominate, which is that these are both potentially really big sources of points, and they're sources of points that are eating out of the same pile as another source of points. So, like, that's where we get into the idea of you can actually trash the card and still keep most of the points. That's a lot less good with Dominate. But the other thing about it is that you get into this concept of contesting them, right? I think it's worth noting that a lot of the conversation we've had so far about Triumph is mostly theoretical and is also kind of assuming you're not being mirrored or contested on Triumphs and estates.
Yeah, and that matters.
It matters a lot because, like, we have to talk about, again, how it could work to then talk about how it ends up working in an actual game, usually.
Yeah, and we talked about this last episode, right?
Yeah.
In a 2-player game, it matters how strong something is uncontested.
Yeah.
Because if it's stronger than anything else you can go for, then yes, you go for it. And then if both players do that, it doesn't matter that it's worse than big money because your opponent.
You had to do it to not be out of the game.
Right.
Like, to be eligible to win. Yeah, I mean, like, Triumph in practice doesn't usually end up... It can, but it doesn't usually end up scoring these big, flashy numbers of points. But that's because people generally have to take earlier and more and crappier Triumphs than they want to because...
If they're mirrored.
Because, yeah, the opponent is probably also building this deck, and then you start sort of racing to get the Triumph points that you can get. Now, and this assumes, of course, that either you can trash the estates or, there isn't just some better source of points that you can be building toward. But, like, it ends up mattering. Like, you end up, like, taking, like, a 5-point Triumph just because, like, well, it takes an estate out of the pile, too, so at least he can't get... That's one Triumph he can't get, and it's points I get now, so...
Yeah, so a lot of these mirrors, I see them going one of two ways. The first way is a pile out, right?
Yeah.
If we're both building decks that gain a lot of cards, piles can get low, and at some point, one person is able to empty piles, and then, oh, by the way, for $0 on their last buy, they can get a big enough chunk of VP that even a Panic Province is nothing compared to it, right?
Yeah, that's where, like, the other big takeaway I have from Triumph in general is that on a board with Triumph, sheer pile control tends to be really... I mean, it tends to be good a lot of the time, but it tends to be really good on a Triumph board because, like, typically your only defense against somebody who is just, like, emptying cards out to pile out is to get points. And then they can't pile out and win, but, like, the Triumph can sometimes end the game and then destroy any points buffer you had because all they need is $0 and not be in debt.
Yeah, so it kind of rewards the player who strikes first in terms of being able to end the game and gaining a lot of cards in order to empty piles, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why you would be more aggressive towards building that way as opposed to, well, I'm going to build a deck that can get a Panic Province or two and is a better deck in the long run. No, all I have to do is empty piles and I get a Triumph for $0.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other way it can go is, estates matter, and estate denial is really important because that's the limiting factor on how many points can be scored. Like, once the estates are gone, you can't Triumph anymore. Well, you can, but you don't get anything.
Yeah, usually, so we talk about, usually contesting estates comes in the form less of, like, actually getting an estate that's not a Triumph, and more in the form of taking a Triumph for less points than you normally would. Like,
Sure.
And that's your contesting estates. Now, there are exceptions to that. I mean, if you are looking at, like, the last 2 or 3 estates, maybe I buy a estate Triumph and just say, okay, that's the end of the Triumph points.
Yeah, what you don't want to do is build a deck that does a thing and then all of a sudden randomly decide, I'm going to buy 8 estates.
Just so you can
and now
get
your
the Triumphs.
deck is bad and you only have 8 points, right? You do want to be getting some points with this. And
Yeah.
it just, you don't need to, you're not going to see the same kind of totals that you would if the opponent wasn't going for Triumph as well. So, like, if I'm going to get 5 of these Triumphs or 5 of the estates, even if I only get an average of, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 points with each one, it's really hard for my opponent to overcome that total.
Now, this is again in the vacuum of the Triumphs being the only points scored, right? Like, because they're a lot of the time, the game's not over just because the estates are out. The way it would be, like, with the difference between, like, Province and Dominate. Like, we talked about doing some math of, like, you have to get this many points, and if you're not going to dominate, you need, like, 6 provinces. Like, that math doesn't really come about with the estate split in Triumph because once the estates are out, the game keeps going. You can go for provinces or whatever.
Yeah, if we didn't pile out, then eventually the game is going to continue. And of course, sure, your deck is made a little bit worse because you have a few more estates in it, but you and your opponent had built your deck towards a very specific purpose of scoring points in this very specific way. And now that that's not there anymore, there's a little bit of an adjustment period before some decks are able to province.
Yeah, depends exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
Because again, that deck that's gaining a bunch of cards, I mean, hopefully those cards do something, right?
I would hope.
Yeah. It's not just like beggar and rats. And...
Hey, what's wrong with beggar and rats, man?
Nothing, man. They're really good for Triumph.
Hey, Toby.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, I guess. But anyway, speaking of cards that are good for Triumph,
yeah,
we could talk about some ways to support Triumph.
Yeah, let's do it.
Sure. So, what kind of stuff? I mean, we can just look at things that gain cards and like, great, that's synergy with Triumph.
That's pretty easy to look at, yeah.
Right, but I mean, some of them are bad.
Some of them are bad. I mean, like, if I'm thinking about ones that are like quite good, I'm thinking about like Procession in general. Like, Procession boards tend to have that craziness going on where you, like, usually have lost track of how many cards you've gained in trash, but you can't lose track on a Triumph board because it matters.
Sure, you might have to count that.
Yeah.
That can be a little funny. I mean, I think Procession is, one of the stars of the show here, but also the entire Throne Room family.
Yeah.
I mean, King's Court is obviously busted, for most kingdoms it appears in, but I mean, that whole family of cards, a lot of times I say something like, the text of Throne Room really reads, what's the best action card on the board? Well, this is +1 action and then that. So, if there's already some kind of support, the multipliers can really help you. Because the key thing about good Triumph support is that it's non-terminal.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to be getting villages to play my woodcutters so that I can have Triumph. I mean, that's just not a way to score a lot of points. I want to spam these stupid things and put them in my deck.
Yeah, I mean, like, beyond... That's going to be the usual case. There are certain treasures that can spam a lot of cards, like if we're thinking about things like maybe Treasure Trove or something like that. That can help you, like, make Triumph a thing.
Sure. A Masterpiece is pretty good.
Masterpiece, yeah.
Delve is okay. Traveling Fair, I mean, it can be great, and if you like math. I think the big star of the show on that front is Talisman.
Yeah.
If Talisman's supported by additional buys,
sure,
you can just gain absurd amounts of cards in one turn. You can gain like 20 to 30. You can just empty the whole copper pile if your opponent lets you build that much. And then Triumph 3 times, and now you have over 100 points. Like, that's insane.
Right. Yeah, that can definitely be a thing.
Talisman has the biggest potential to get out of control.
Yeah.
Aside from that, I'm looking at non-terminal gainers. So the good ones are the cantrips, right? The Workers' Village and the Market Square.
I mean, even something like Bandit Fort, or not Bandit Village.
Bandit Camp.
Bandit Camp.
Yeah, nice.
Market Bandit. But yeah.
Market Bandit Village Camp.
Yeah, Bandit Camp works pretty well too, just because it's a cantrip that gains a card.
Yeah.
The spoils, it helps you pay off debt and get more triumphs, but really, we don't. If the spoils was just a blank card, it would still work for this purpose because it's gaining a card and it's a cantrip.
Yeah, and less good are the things like University or like Ironworks or Artificer or something.
Things that reduce your hand size to gain.
Yeah, I mean Artificer doesn't have to, but like now you're top decking coppers, which feels pretty bad, especially if you want to gain a lot of them.
Yeah, right.
So that's not the best, and really not like. I mean, Magpie's really tough to get that to work, and Rats. Hey, Toby, but unless you have some really specific support.
Well, Magpie is not tough to get Magpie to work, especially because the Magpies, speaking to like, are things that are going in the deck anyway. Yeah.
But like by the time you're ready to Triumph, the Magpies are usually gone.
Yeah. I mean, maybe on that turn you get that last Magpie.
This
doesn't. Yeah, this is marginal.
Get that extra point. It's so good.
So,
I would say the biggest exceptions to the non-terminal rule, there's 2 of them, and I think it's Wharf, and I think it's Haggler.
Yeah.
Wharf because it usually just gives you buys in abundance, which is something that Triumph really likes.
So if Wharf is a terminal, you can get 3 buys on your turn, right?
Yeah, by itself, without a village.
Yeah. So
without a village, neither one of these is spectacular.
Yeah, okay.
But Haggler along with a lot of buys, you can just gain absurd amounts of cards.
Yeah, because you can have multiple hagglers out. And
Yeah,
doing,
it has
doing
that
crazy
same.
stuff.
It has that same multiplicative effect on just the number of cards you gain. So now you're multiplying your buys by the number of hagglers you have out. Now, granted, you have to play multiple hagglers, and that can be tough.
Yeah,
You gain a lot of cards.
another one I'd say you look out for, and I don't just want to name like all the sources of gains in the game, but like another one I'd say like you look out for with Triumph Out is Stonemason. Just because Stonemason, you buy it and it gains 3 cards, you play it and it gains 2 cards, so like, you know, Stonemason can ramp those points up pretty quickly too.
Yeah, it's like a super traveling fair.
Yeah.
Mostly for buying it, though. I mean, yeah, you can play it, but the buying it's a lot sexier.
Oh man, it depends. I don't know. Playing it can be really nice too in that respect.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
All right, judgment match. Buying Stonemason versus playing Stonemason.
Wait, what? How am I even...
Wet t-shirt contest. No, okay, sorry.
How am I even doing? How am I even... Because do I have to gain the Stonemasons with Workshop or something?
That's the joke.
Okay. It was a good one.
Yeah.
Nice.
Good talk.
Yeah. So, yeah, the only other thing, just like a weird little synergy is, again, with anything that can trash the estates. So, like, trashing the estates is more good with this than it, like, normally would be with something like this, so...
Watchtower!
Well, yeah, Watchtower is actually the one I was going to bring up. It's like, you know, Watchtower, you can spend all your gains on crappy cards... and on these estates and not care so much. So it's
man, I find that usually when
it's not that great, but
when I'm contested, like I mean maybe I have time for that. I don't know. When I'm not contested, I'm just gonna build and build and build until I have a points mega turn.
Sure. The question I'm usually asking there is, do I want a Watchtower in my deck?
Well, Watchtower is a pretty good card.
Yeah. So like. If I've already got the Watchtower in my deck, like, you know, I can be getting more points off my Triumph without making my deck a ton worse.
It's like Goons and Watchtower, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's great on paper, and it has this great potential, but, like, how many times do you actually use that in a game?
Sometimes. Not a lot. But it happens.
There you go. We did it.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about Triumph, do you?
Nope.
He closes his outline definitively.
Yep. We're done.
Yeah.
Heard that click.
Other
vociferous.
than the kingdom that we're going to be playing that has Triumph in it.
Yeah. You want me to read the cards?
Let's just let the users intuit.
Okay. So this kingdom's really cool. I think it has a lot of cool cards.
Yeah.
Especially that last one.
Yeah. All right, we should probably read the cards.
Scrying Pool, Smugglers, Blessed Village, Farming Village, Navigator, Crown, Old Witch, Tactician, Tragic Hero, Wharf, and we have Triumph, and we have Citadel.
Yeah.
One more time for our audio-only listeners. Scrying Pool, Smugglers, Blessed Village, Farming Village, Navigator, Crown, Old Witch, Tactician, Tragic Hero, Wharf, and we have Triumph and Citadel.
This kingdom's got a lot going on. And Triumph is quite good. I don't think anyone would argue it's not, yeah.
Yeah, I see Wharf, and I see Crown, which is part of the Throne Room family, and I'm thinking to myself, give me those Triumph points.
I mean, man, so, I think you probably get Wharves, but the thing is, I'm not 100%, because Crown Tragic Hero is a thing. Crown Tragic Hero is a really good thing. And
I think you need Wharves because there's no trashing, and like I just don't want to not kick off half of my turns.
This is true, but like those like 1 or 2 turns you do kick off in the Tragic Hero Crown like mega turn kind of deck that I'm like talking about here might be enough.
That seems
just win
nuts
you
to
the
me.
game.
Wharf having good turns consistently is way better, and Wharf is the best way to do it. There's no doubt in my mind. Wharf is essential.
Listen, there's doubt in my mind, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying I'm not sure you're right.
Okay, I'm sure that I'm right.
I'm
so
thinking
it's a good thing I am.
I'm going to be trying at least a few games where I ignore Wharf and just do Crown Tragic Hero and try to have a mega turn that way.
Good luck with that, man.
It's a thing, okay?
Nice.
And I think it's probably fine.
You were also saying scrying pool?
Yeah, so I think that, like, let's say I'm not doing the Crown Treasure Kira thing. I think that you probably need to go Scrying Pool here.
Yeah, I'm not sold on scrying pool. Now, I know I've ignored scrying pool in a lot of games and lost because of it, but man, I don't like it here.
I'm normally the guy who's telling you to ignore Scrying Pool when it is bad to ignore it. But, like, I don't think you can get away with it ignoring. Believe me, I don't like Scrying Pool. I will, like, try to ignore it any chance I get because I don't like the card. And I think it's like any kingdom that has Scrying Pool would be more interesting if it just didn't have Scrying Pool. But
I think this one's about the same because you don't want scrying pool.
I think you have to get it here. I don't think it's optional. I think it's... I mean, like, look, there's some super good draw.
Yeah, you have Wharf and Tragic Hero, which I would rather be putting in the deck.
But man, the Scrying Pool just helps me put that many more stop cards in.
But does it really? Scrying
Yeah.
Pool's really... But what stop cards are you talking about?
Well, treasures, but like...
I don't want to put more treasures in the deck. The only treasure I want to put more of in the deck is Crown.
Helps me play my Old Witch more.
Okay, so Old Witch is important, for sure.
Helps... I mean, the attack
I
is
don't think
relevant.
Scrying Pool helps you play Old Witch more because you have to get a potion. And now you're not getting a silver, which can use to buy an Old Witch.
Yeah.
I think my first fiver is Old Witch. I think I'm opening silver. Silver? Do I get a Navigator?
No.
No. Okay. Well, that was a good thought experiment.
Yeah. So okay. What's my open? Probably Triumph Smuggler. No.
On a 3/4, do I ever consider Blessed Village on my second turn?
I don't
Seems
think
nuts.
so.
I don't like
think
it.
That's good.
I want double silver.
I think I probably want double silver as well. Like I'm
Second player, I might get Silver Smugglers.
I mean, I might get Silver Smugglers as first player too. I don't really think it matters all that much.
I think I'd only get it as second player. I don't like Smugglers though. I would probably get the silver either way.
I'm probably going silver just to get an Old Witch really fast.
After that, I'm getting a bunch of villages. Probably a Smugglers total. I'm gonna get a lot of Wharfs, a lot of villages, some crowns.
Well, the crowns are most of the village I'm getting. I mean, I think I'm probably getting Blessed Village before I get Farming Village.
I mean, if I don't have 5, I'm gonna get some villages. And
yeah.
Yes, Blessed Village is way better than Farming Village.
Tactician seems skippable.
Really?
Yeah.
I wonder if there's place for a single Tactician in the deck.
Maybe really early? I want to draw my deck every turn.
Yeah?
And I don't think that's going to be that hard.
I think it's going to be hard. I don't know. I don't think I want the... Tactician's close. I don't think I want it, but I don't think it's nuts.
Citadel seems quite good.
Yeah. Give me that Citadel when I hit 8.
I don't know. The main question I have is, do you get Wharf or not? And it comes down to me is like, is ignoring Wharf for Tragic Hero viable? Like, is the synergy between Tragic Hero and Crown so powerful that I get to ignore Wharf for it? I don't know.
I definitely don't think you ignore Wharf. Yeah. Well, yeah, let us know what you think. Do you go for Scrying Pool? Do you go for Wharf?
Do you go for Familiar?
Do you go for Familiar? Yeah. Endless question.
Yeah. What would you do if you could get Will-O-Wisps here?
But you can.
Oh, nice.
It's right there. Blessed Village. You did
nice.
it. But, like, as a kingdom pile, though.
Yeah, if you just buy them.
That would be pretty sweet. Let us know what you think. If you are a YouTube listener, you can leave a comment in the comments section.
If you are not a YouTube listener, well...
Yell it real loud. We might hear you.
I hope you enjoyed the podcast.
Yeah. You can go to adamhorton.com. You get forums, link to the Discord, all our contact information.
Yep.
You can let us know what you think. We'd like to hear from you.
Yeah. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for doing that. So I have this drink. It's I found this at Jungle Gyms in the Indian food section. It's a basil seed drink. This one is aloe vera flavored. I don't know if you can see this, but there's like little basil seeds floating, like suspended in the drink. They don't sink or float. They're just kind of there.
It looks like a science experiment. Like
Yeah.
if you like look at it like top down, I don't know if you can like. It looks really freaky. It looks like I'm looking at something under a microscope, and that something has like caused the death of a lot of people in some, second world country.
Wow.
And so we're about to drink it.
And now we're
right?
gonna drink
Yeah.
it. This is
So-
aloe vera flavored.
yeah.
They had a bunch of other flavors, but tonight we're trying aloe vera because it's
Yeah.
the most likely that I won't like it. The other ones are like pineapple and honey and other good
Aloe
things.
vera is a nice flavor, actually. It's like
I've never had anything aloe vera flavored. I haven't even smelled this yet.
the best way I can describe it. I've had other aloe things is like Capri Sun, basically. Like I don't think
it's
Capri
like-
Sun is actually aloe vera.
It's like a
flavored, but-
cucumber melon kind of thing.
Yeah, this doesn't smell like Capri Sun.
All right, I'm gonna try it. I've had other basil seed drinks of this brand, and I do like the
Okay.
texture of the basil seeds, but I don't think you have.
Well, cheers.
Yeah, to making your own shuffle luck.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
The flavor, it's great. It's refreshing.
So
It's definitely got that cucumber melon vibe to it.
yeah, it does. Here's my question: are the basil seeds here for flavor, or like are they like good for you or something?
So I can taste the basil seeds, but you do have to crunch them and get to the crunchy bits in the middle. So like they're kind of like suspended in this jelly surrounding the basil seeds, and it's a very strange texture because you can
Really
like
is.
chew it. I mean, I like my orange juice with extra pulp because I like to chew my orange juice, and this is kind of similar, only it's a combination of that and bubble tea. But like the
Yeah.
bubbles don't like explode with flavor; they crunch because there's a basil seed in the middle.
Yeah, bubble tea bubbles don't explode with flavor either. Have you ever had bubble tea? It's kind of gross, actually.
I mean, it's not my favorite, but I've had it.
They're
and-
like they're just these tasteless like jelly things. But yeah, anyway, yeah.
This is great.
We were pretty good.